putting things together for one person can be a challenge, and even if there's two of you, that can sometimes be difficult to find some things that aren't always just the same or that aren't always plain. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to try something that can be either a complete meal for one, or probably two if you're not real hungry, maybe an evening meal for someone who's a little bit older or dieting, or you could use it as a side dish with a few modifications. What this is a mixture of vegetables, and what I have first of all are some red potatoes that I cooked ahead, and then I've cut them into fairly small pieces, and you could cut them even smaller than this. The original recipe called for a 1/4 inch dice. I'm a little bit too lazy to go that far, so these are a little bit larger than that. I've left the peel on so they get a little bit of color and a little bit more nutrition, and to that I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon of seasoned salt and then some chives. And if you have green onions, that works well. I'm just going to cut these with the scissors, and it says about 2 teaspoons full. I've modified this recipe from one that was in a newspaper that said it was a dish for one, but it was a restaurant dish. And you know, the serving sizes on those can be humongous, and the nutrition is not necessarily what we would hope it to be. So what I've done is cut back the amount of seasoning salt. And if you find it's not seasoned enough, what I would do at this point is add some black pepper, maybe even some lemon pepper. So you can play with this one. In essence, it's like a salad. Just want to mix these well until we have everything blended together and we have some seasoning on all the pieces. Then use an 8-inch skillet and set it over the flame to start it getting warm. And I'll see if I can turn this down just a little bit without completely turning it off. Now this is going to look like a lot for a small pan, but remember, a lot of these vegetables that we're going to put in are going to collapse as they begin heating. And it's a layered dish, so all we're going to do is keep adding levels on. To that, I'm going to add 1/2 cup of tomatoes. And again, remember that because this is something that you're going to layer, if you wanted to add more or less of any one of these things, you can. Then I've got about 1/4 cup of bell pepper. But again, if you like it spicier, feel free to use less of bell pepper and a spicier pepper, either a habanero or a jalapeno. Then over top of that, I'm going to add 1/2 cup of zucchini or yellow squash, whichever your garden is producing, or your farmer's market. Over that, I've got 1/4 cup of green onion, or you can even use yellow onion. I tried that and it works very well also. Then some sliced mushrooms, about 1/2 cup of those. Go over the top of this. And then to top that all off, I'm going to mix together about 1/4 cup of each Monterey Jack and cheddar cheese. And just mix them enough to blend them a little bit. Now the original recipe called for 1/2 cup of each of these, which if you like a lot of fat in your diet would work just fine, but we're going to use this more as an everyday dish than an occasional Sunday brunch item, and so I've cut the amount of both of them in half. Now this then becomes a complete meal because you have the cheese in there, which is a sufficient amount of cheese to be a complete meal. If you're going to use this as a side dish, maybe even use it as 1/4 of this for 4 people and serve it with meat, I'd make sure you serve it with a lean meat. And I would very probably use only one of the types of cheeses or cut the amount of cheese in half again. By cutting the cheese in half, I dropped the calorie content from close to over 800 to down to just about 600. And I dropped the amount of saturated fat, or total fat, from 45 grams to 27, which dropped saturated fat, cut that in half as well. Now you could also replace the cheese, the regular fat cheese or regular strength cheese, with a low-fat variety, but I never think that they melt as well nor taste as good, and so I'm more willing to use a sharp cheese, which is what I've done here, and cut the amount down. This is going to simmer covered, and I've used aluminum foil because I don't have a lid that quite fits this, for about 5 minutes or until it gets brown on the bottom. After about 5 minutes, check it, and if the cheese has melted, you're ready to go. It's dinner time. So you can see that you can have a lot of these things done ahead. The trick then, or the theory is at least, is that you run a spatula around the edges of it. Now the original recipe, remember, had so much more cheese that it would stick together better. So this one may not slide off all in one piece, the way the original one did, but I thought it looked real good anyway, even if it was stirred together a little bit more. Okay, we're going to top that off with just a couple of things to make it even more special. I'm going to put a couple of sprigs of basil along the side, just as decoration, and then 2 or 3 slices of avocado. Now remember, avocado is also going to add some fat to it, so if you want to cut it down, you can leave that out. But the fat in the avocado is highly monounsaturated, so it's what we consider to be a healthy fat, but you could leave it off. The other advantages to not using it is that you don't have 3/4 of an avocado sitting around later. Then the last thing we're going to do on this is add just a dollop of fat-free or light sour cream, and maybe one more little piece of basil to look good. 1 person, 2 persons, maybe even up to 4 if it uses as a side dish. This is a complete meal. Almost everything can come straight from your garden, and you can serve it with pride. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.